Warning, the trailer you're about to hear is the perfect trailer.
Is that my quickest cold open ever? Maybe. Now here's the trailer for Death and.
Death. What does that word make you think about? A grandparent? A friend you've lost? Your own mortality? Here's what I think about. What does death have in common with vegetables? What does it have in common with furniture? Or coffee? Or sex? I'm Victor M. Sweeney, and despite accidentally becoming the most famous mortician on the internet just by answering weird questions about dead bodies, I'm a pretty typical guy. Some people like to say I'm in the death business, and no doubt I spend a lot of time embalming bodies, sifting through human ash, or reconstructing the occasional face, but getting to know the deceased by ushering their loved ones through their grief, essentially exploring life through the lens of death. That's the real reward for this small-town undertaker. And that's why I have a podcast. So if you're drawn to real conversations about death, life, spirituality, mortuary science, and sure, dead bodies, then this isn't just my podcast. It's ours. From Waveland, this is Death and.
Welcome to Trailer Park, the podcast trailer podcast. I'm Ariel Nissenblatt. If you're new here, I'm glad to have you. If you're a true trailer head, I owe you an explanation. I ghosted you. I parked at the trailer park and I never left my trailer. Simply put, I pod faded. But I'm back, so I guess I didn't pod fade? There's not really a term for that. I guess I'll say I've emerged from the trailer to bring you more trailers. A bit about this show. On Trailer Park, I hit play on a trailer and then I talk about that trailer. What worked, what fell short. Sometimes I'm in a more critiquey mood than others. And it's not necessarily dependent on the strength of that trailer. Sometimes I just don't want to talk so much, even if I loved or hated that trailer and have a lot of feelings about it either way. I like to give myself that flexibility with this show, and to be transparent with you about my process. Anyone can submit a trailer to possibly be featured and critiqued on this show. There is a link to submit in the show notes of this episode. Now, let's get to the trailer that you just heard. That 94-second trailer is for a show called Death and, a show hosted by internet-famous mortician Victor M. Sweeney. From the show's website, it's described as equal parts heart, humor, and heaping portions of the unexpected. Death and explores how death colors the moments that make us human. When I cold opened this episode, I said it was the perfect trailer. And honestly, sometimes I am that easy to please. Of course, I don't want to actually say it was 10 out of 10 perfect because I always want to leave room for more and better, but from the pacing to the music and the sound effect choices, to the host's tone and his actual voice, to the intrigue that the show presents, I was really into it the whole way through. But can a trailer ever truly be perfect? Who's to say? Maybe me, actually. I feel like that's the point of the show. But really, I don't think that in making trailers for podcasts, we are striving for perfection per se. I think we're striving to reach an audience that will hopefully be interested in checking out the rest of our episodes. So I hope you don't feel pressure to go for perfect, but to really make something that resonates with the audience that you're hoping to be in touch with and to have as fans. Here are some other things that stood out to me in this trailer. 1. The writing needed to be really strong in order for us to relate to Victor M. Sweeney, who is in a profession that most of us might be a little freaked out by. And the writing was indeed very strong. By the end, even though he was talking about facial reconstruction, I felt like it wasn't that weird anymore, which was cool. Number 2, the music, while making allusions to creepiness and maybe even death, it isn't entirely in your face about it, which makes it even more surprising for the listener and maybe even kept me on my toes more than if the music was obviously trying to be creepy or freaky. And 3, the concept of this show is fascinating to me. While we don't learn in the trailer exactly who Victor will be interviewing, we do get a string of keywords that will be discussed, like mortuary science, spirituality, and others that are visceral enough so that we know what to expect. Also, the name of the show sets it up so that the episodes can be named in the convention of Death and topic, which I think is really well done and enticing. And here are some of the episodes that you can expect that, of course, follow that naming convention. Death and Attitude, Death and You, Death and the Jazz Funeral, Death and a Death Cafe, and a lot more. This show debuted in August of 2025, and there have been a few episodes since, so I hope you check out Death and. As we sometimes do on the show when we can make it happen, I've got a short clip to share with you from one of the producers of Death and. He also happens to be the producer of this here podcast, Adam Flaherty. I asked him to share a bit more about what went into the making of this trailer.
Hi, this is Adam.
And this is Mark. And we are the creators of the podcast Death and.
The project started as a result of the host, Victor Sweeney, being a guest on our podcast, Modern Dadhood. We had a great chat with him about raising children in and around a funeral home. And when we got finished with that chat, Mark and I just kept thinking not only how cool this person was and how we kind of wanted to be friends with him, but also that he really should host a podcast of his own because his stories are so fascinating.
I'm pretty sure the conversation was, that guy's got something. There's something special about Victor.
So after courting him for several months, he agreed to do it, and we started the ball rolling. In terms of the trailer specifically, the goal, I think, was to give people a sense of who Victor is as a person, as a storyteller, and to give just a hint of his dry sense of humor.
I think Victor has a really special vibe, and that vibe really needed to come across in the trailer. So much of the success of the show, we think, is going to be purely his charm and his wit and his vibe and that dry sense of humor that Adam mentioned.
The podcast will be a chat show, but as opposed to Victor just interviewing people, we really want it to be a two-way conversation because so much about what makes Victor an appealing host is the things that he's open to sharing about the funeral industry and mortuary science. And
I think listeners are going to be constantly surprised because I can tell you from experience that every time I talk to Victor, I hear something I completely do not expect to hear. Here's an example. Last time we talked, he talked about decapitation, and I'm going to leave it at that.
This is going to be a video and an audio podcast. So the video version is going to live on Victor's YouTube channel, which is Victor M. Sweeney. And they can find Death and with Victor M. Sweeney on any of the audio podcast platforms. And we really hope people enjoy it. We're super psyched about it.
Thank you to Adam for sharing that with us and for sharing the trailer of this podcast with me in the first place. That's it for this anti-pod fade episode of Trailer Park. Thank you for listening. At this point in the episode, I would love to read a review from a listener, but I can't do that because I haven't gotten any reviews lately, and that is entirely on me because of the whole pod fade thing that I've mentioned a few times. But it doesn't have to be the case for our next episode. Leave a review on Apple or a comment on Spotify, and I'll shout you out in the next installment of Trailer Park. Thank you to Adam Flaherty for producing and editing this episode. Thank you to Kaio Slikta for the artwork for our show. Thank you to Victor M. Sweeney for being the host of a very cool new show. And thank you to you, listener, for hitting play, and for hopefully doing it again next episode. Happy trails!